Hi, my name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelan McAleer.
And welcome to the Anne and Phelan Scoop.
Yes. What is today, Anne?
Today is St. Patrick's Day. Woohoo! And it's week 52 of the 2-week Flatten the Curve lockdown. And yes, that is 1 year in everybody's book, no matter what way you're recording time. It's been a full year, but later, much more about that. Later.
But we have big news. On today's show, we've got big news about our Hunter Biden project. We've announced the movie. We'll talk about that later on. And the other movie news, Anne?
Yes, the Oscar nominations have been announced, and we have news about Created Equal, the Clarence Thomas documentary, which didn't get a nomination but you know.
We'll tell you what did and why.
Exactly.
And in the UK, the Conservative government declines even further in their capitulation to climate hysteria.
And we have, because it's St. Patrick's Day, we have some recipes. Not only recipes, but also a very nice cocktail to consume.
Glorious St. Patrick.
And by the way, we got someone writing to us, Phelan, about our rendition of the Hail Glorious St. Patrick, our very dear friend in New York, who was not impressed. Who said it needed work, and she's a person with she knows things about the theatre.
That's true.
So
her daughter
yes. Our dear friend Betty. Yes, we heard you, and we have not prepared a song for today, but you never know what might happen yet.
Yes.
But first, we have huge news that just happened this week.
We're going to make a movie called My Son Hunter, the Hunter Biden biopic. Here's a pitch video that we've sent out. So let's play that video, give you a few more details.
Hi, my name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelan McAleer, and we have huge news for you. Yes. We're making a new feature film called My Son Hunter. And yes, you've guessed it, it's about Hunter Biden and his corrupt business dealings.
Laptop.
This movie is going to tell the whole story, China, Russia, Ukraine, and you can help make this happen by going to mysonhunter.com. We need your donations, so go to mysonhunter.com.
This is the story that the mainstream media and big tech tried to suppress. I mean, we know that Twitter suppressed the story in the New York Post.
Suppressed? They banned it. You could not forward a legitimate news story during an election campaign.
And we know also that CNN's Jeff Zucker also told his journalists to spike the story so that it would never be heard. So
we're telling this story. This is a movie, not a documentary. It's going to be told in a compelling and entertaining way. We know the MRC, the Media Research Centre, did a poll, and they found that 16% of Biden voters would have changed their vote if they'd known the truth about Hunter Biden. So this is an entertaining movie about a very, very serious topic.
This is a story that has to come out. This is a story that needs to be known by everyone. Yeah. And we're asking for your help again. You helped the last time. We're so grateful to you for what you did with the Gosnell movie. This time we're asking for your help again. Go to mysonhunter.com, mysonhunter.com to give what you can, and it's all tax deductible. We're a 501c3. This film is going to be free for the public, for everyone to see. So please give what you can right now. Yeah,
so media and Hollywood won't do their jobs. We're trying to raise 2.5 million. We need grassroots donations like yours, because Hollywood and the studio system won't fund this. So please go to mysonhunter.com. We're going to film this over the summer. It's going to be fun, but it's going to be important, and hope you'll come along for the journey.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, bye.
Yes.
There's one we recorded earlier,
as they say
in the industry. So, Anne, who is Hunter Biden?
Hunter Biden is the son of Joe Biden, and Joe Biden is the President of the United States. And Hunter Biden has a very interesting history, I think in polite circles it's called a checkered history.
Or colourful.
But another word for it is corrupt. So here's a guy who has, and God help him, by the way, who has a drug issue, has a very serious drug issue. Everyone is very sympathetic to that.
And I just want to say, we're not making a movie to make fun of Hunter Biden's addiction issues.
No.
It's relevant because you say why his addiction is relevant, Anne, to the movie. Why it's included?
Exactly. I mean, so here's a guy who has obviously got this addiction issue. Who went to the Navy for a day and was rejected on the day he went to the Navy because the system was full of cocaine. Here's a guy who went to rehab. The day he went to rehab, he met a woman called Bicycles, a homeless woman, and went and lived with her instead of going to rehab. Here's a guy who randomly got a diamond ring from the Chinese worth $85,000. A guy who randomly got $3 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. A guy who, you know, if you have an energy company and you're really trying to do the right thing, trying to work out how we're going to make a living, how we're going to make this company work, and you look around the whole world after doing what do they call it, Phelim? They call it a
headhunting.
A headhunting, no, but they do that thing,
Executive research.
An executive search. This executive search throughout the world of executives, of the kind of people you want to have on your board. And Burisma, an energy company in Ukraine, after doing that due diligence, decided that the one person they had to have on that board was this guy with a very serious drug addiction issue.
And it never worked in the energy sector before.
And it never worked in the energy sector before. But there was something, but obviously there is something about him, because at the time his father happened to be the Vice President of the United States. But we're meant to think
and then the father
they're not connected.
Openly boasted about getting a prosecutor fired in the Ukraine, and that prosecutor was investigating Burisma. So this is why we're making this film. And actually, the real reason we're making it is because these stories were all due to come out before the election, and they did come out, and then they were actively suppressed by big media and big tech, and people didn't know these stories when they went in to vote. And I think people need to know the truth, and we're called the Unreported Story Society. That's why we're making this movie. That's why we need your help.
It's actually, yeah, you make that, that's exactly right, Phelim, because it's very, very similar in one way to the Gosnell movie, in one very specific way to the Gosnell movie. The Gosnell movie was a shocking story about Dr. Cormac Gosnell, all the things he did, all the things that weren't done by the government agencies in Pennsylvania, all of that. But there was one thing, there is one huge thing that connects these two stories and very much connects our connection to them. And it is the fact that both of these stories were unreported, underreported, misreported, censored, covered up in every possible way. And it's worse, it's actually worse this time. This is a bigger project than Gosnell. This cover-up here is much, much worse. This film is as much about media as it is about the Biden family.
So if you want to stop the big tech cover-up, the big media cover-up, the big Hollywood cover-up, go to mysonhunter.com, give what you can. There's some very nice rewards there all set up, and some nice perks. But the biggest perk of all will be, I hope, that you are playing a part in stopping a cover-up, playing a part in getting the truth told.
And this movie will be free to the public, and it'll be available everywhere. There'll be no barriers to entry, so it'll be something that you can get wherever you are, and no matter what no matter what barriers they put up against us, we're gonna tear them down, and we're gonna make sure that you get this movie. So please give what you can and help. But actually, talking of which, we actually talked a little bit earlier to Dan Gainor from the Media Research Centre.
And they've done some sterling work on the whole Hunter Biden story, and a poll they did, and we'll talk about that during the interview, a poll they did is one of the main reasons
why we decided to do this in the first place.
Because it showed how important it was. So we recorded the Dan Gainor interview just before we came on air here. So let's go over now to that interview. It's wonderful to have our friend Dan Gainor on the show. What to say about Dan? Dan has got a very long title. He is now the Vice President of Free Speech America, Business and Culture at the Media Research Centre. He's had a long career in the media. He's been on more shows than I've had hot dinners. He's written for more newspapers than I've read.
Then you know the names of.
Yeah, all of them. Wall Street Journal. He's been, he's basically an expert. He's both a journalist and an expert on the media, which is what we need in these times. So welcome, Dan, to the show.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be on with you. It's a pleasure. It's always fun to do media with people you're actually friends with, as opposed to just people you sort of know.
Yes.
We're COVID kinder. We might be doing this over a pint.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Please God, we will, Dan.
Yes.
On the next MRC cruise as well.
Yeah.
Please.
There's alcohol looming for us, and I'm so calm admitting that.
It's meant to be.
Yeah. So the reason, Dan, we're having you on today is because, as you know, we're making a movie, My Son Hunter, and I often say that if the mainstream media did its job, I'd be out of a job.
Yes.
So we're making the movie about Hunter Biden, and the reason it's such an important movie and the reason it's going to be such fun to make is because this was a story that was suppressed by the establishment, right? There's no doubt about it. They were quite open about that. And it was suppressed by the establishment in the run up to an election. So can you go back and tell people about the Hunter Biden story from the media point of view, from the media research point of view?
Well, I mean, this was... There's sort of, this is like one of those AD and BC kind of events, because there's everything leading up to the election and then, what's followed from there. Leading up to the election, New York Post, God bless them, came up with, detailed stories about the questionable actions of Hunter Biden, particularly dealing with Ukraine and China, China being important because it's and even now the Biden administration admits it's our number one adversary. So maybe having a president who's got close ties to there is big issue. So they came out with this story, and immediately Facebook, through one of their PR people, announced on Twitter they were going to suppress sharing of the story. Twitter immediately followed, and to the point where Twitter actually suspended the account of the New York Post and then actively suspended anybody who posted the story, including one of my coworkers who's a managing editor for Newsbusters. You got suspended if you posted a news story from one of the oldest news organizations in the United States leading up to the election. They kept the New York Post account suspended for 17 days. And unlike history, ordinarily when there's a censorship event, journalists step up. And I will say one of the commendable aspects of the profession when they do this, if somebody tries to suppress a story, they'll all report it so that you can't suppress it. The Pentagon Papers are a very famous example of this. Mm-hmm. And that didn't happen here. In fact, what happened was the major media were perfectly happy to see the story suppressed because they were all on board for electing Joe Biden. And so the story didn't get out.
And let's be quite clear what the story was. I mean, it was many stories. I mean, there was so many stories, but at the heart of the story was that Hunter Biden, who unfortunately is a drug addict by his own admission, had left a laptop in for repair, and I suppose was busy with other things and hadn't collected the laptop. And the owner of the shop kept phoning him saying, collect your laptop, collect your laptop. When he heard that Hunter was being investigated, he handed it over to the FBI. Actually, one of the saddest part of this story is he contacted several senators and congressmen in the United States and got no. And I know this is true because they never got back to him. And I've been there myself, contacting these overpaid, underworked Republican representatives. Let me tell you. And
in your case, Republican representatives.
Yes, and so they didn't get back to him, and he then contacted the New York Post, and they put their team on it and came up with really great stories. And I mean, this is stories about Hunter Biden getting on the board, who is a drug addict and alcoholic, getting on the board of an energy company, a prosecutor being then dismissed at the behest of Joe Biden to help his son's company. Then we're talking about emails where he says he's cutting the big guy in for 10%, and Joe Biden is the big guy. Then and other people are CC'd in these emails, and it's not as if you couldn't. I mean, you could easily debunk these emails if they're fake because other people were CC'd on them, and all you have to do is phone them up or email them because you got their email address and say, "Is this a genuine email?" And if 2 or 3 people say this is made up, then that's a good story.
The story falls to pieces.
Yeah, and you've suddenly got a media hoax story, which is a great story as well. They did nothing of this. They just suppressed the story and made no attempt. The thing that shows you that it's true, and they knew it was true, is they did nothing to debunk the story.
They haven't denied it.
No, but even the other media outlets, well, Joe Biden's never denied it because no one's ever asked him about it, but other media outlets did nothing to debunk the story because they knew if they went in to debunk it, it would just get bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what they did, they suppressed it. And they suppressed it in such a way, so awfully, that even their own people kind of threw them under the bus. In the case of Facebook, Facebook has this deal with Poynter Institute, which runs the International Fact-Checking Network. And so they're the ones responsible for all these awful fact checkers that we ordinarily bash all the time because they're overwhelmingly liberal and bash and they attack narrative, not facts. But even the International Fact-Checking Network said that Facebook hadn't obeyed its own policies and had just simply suppressed the story for no reason at all.
Yeah.
But then, as a result, the story didn't really get out. It only got out in conservative media. A lot of people didn't know about it. And then you go after the election. Well, after the election, the Media Research Center, we dug into what had happened. And so we did polling involving Democrats who voted for Joe Biden, and said, what stories did they know about? What didn't they? And the Hunter Biden scandal, I'm looking at the number right now, 45.1% of Democrats, voters for Joe Biden, didn't know about it. Nearly half of the people who voted for Joe Biden didn't know about it. And if they had, it would have resulted in a shift away from Biden, 9% of his votes, guaranteeing just that one story. And we found 7 other topics that the media had done an awful job, including Tara Reade, the sex assault allegations against Joe Biden, the economy, and everything else. But that would have resulted in Donald Trump winning 311 electoral votes, basically a cakewalk for Donald Trump to win the election. That's what suppressing the news does. And so the major media were able, in combination, working in conjunction with their buddies in big tech, to fix a presidential election. Now, I'm not talking about, they didn't, change numbers at the ballot box or beat up people heading to the election to vote. No, they simply suppressed information that people had a right and a need to know. And they did so in a way that affected the result.
Yeah. And, they made so much talk of foreign interference in the last election. And, there was these Macedonians who were making money out of stupid headlines, that was they were making a couple of 100,000. That was foreign interference. And there was the Russian foreign interference with these fake Facebook accounts.
Creating memes,
now, this is actually a textbook example of election interference by an organization the organizations that are supposed to be neutral, and organizations, by the way, that are constitutionally protected and legally protected, have their own legal status. The police just can't, and the FBI just can't investigate a journalist like they can a civilian. So they have these massive protections on the understanding that they do their job without fear or favor. And now you have a situation where you've got constitutionally protected people who whose job it is now is to defend one political party. Is to suppress bad news about one political party. That can't last, can it?
Well, what we end up with is in many ways, the old Soviet model, where we have state media when it's the president that they endorse. And by that, you can't find any difference really day to day from, left-wing talking points and CNN. Left-wing talking points and MSNBC, the statements you see from Chuck Todd or Brian Stelter, versus the statements you see from Jansaki, who's the White House press secretary. They're the same people. They're the same. They vote the same. They speak the same. They push the same talking points, and they claim, oh, by the way, that the right's the problem. That's when you had the old Soviet Union, Pravda, we all remember, back when, during the Cold War, Pravda would handle their political opponents more subtly than the left-wing media does in this country now, because they always we'll give them a little attention, so it looks like we're being neutral.
Yeah.
And then you turn on CNN, and CNN is just full on, must destroy anybody we disagree with. It's astonishing. It's yes.
Well, I think one of the.
Well, I just want to say something. One thing you raised there, Dan, that I'm glad you did, was the correct pronunciation of Jansaki's name, which I had never known. Actually, did you know that her name is Psaki?
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's like Psalm.
Oh, it's like Psalm.
Is it one of those Polish names, or what is it, sir?
I have no idea. but it's silent, just like Psalm. So that's how.
Magda, is that Polish? Is that a Polish name? Psaki?
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Our Polish correspondent
says Polish correspondent let us down rather badly this morning. Now,
yeah.
Actually, it's very interesting the way listening to you talk about that, Dan, and it really proves how right we are to make this movie. Because while this movie, obviously a huge part of this movie is about exposing what the Biden family have been up to, this incredible story. But almost as big a part of this whole reason for doing this film is to expose the media for what they did in the run-up to an election with this kind of information available, that they suppressed it. I mean, one thing that we really, one of the big targets of this movie is what is the media, and exposing the media, exposing the New York Times and Facebook and these other, and the big tech organizations that did this unbelievable thing. As you say, you can only compare this to like the Chinese or, the Russians, this kind of totalitarianism and suppression. It's really scary, and I think people need to know and need to get angry. And I think your polling, what the MRC did,
is invaluable.
And I think it's one of the main By the way, when we heard about your polling, it was very much the motivation for us to make this movie.
I just want to say for people out there,
obviously, that's very cool. I can't wait to tell my boss that. He would be most pleased.
Yeah, no, it was a major impetus, really, that people were voting without knowing the truth, and by the way, we're not trying to change their vote. We just want them to know the truth. And for people, I obviously want to say, people out there listening to this, we may have repeated this a few times, we're going to repeat it again. Hollywood won't fund this, studio system won't fund this. It's all been funded by grassroots donations, ordinary people with no connection to Hollywood. So please go to mysonhunter.com. Let's make this happen. Let's get the truth out there, and let's have an informed electorate who do not suffer from having the truth suppressed by big tech and big media and big Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll take it one step further. One of the big dangers is, that the party in power in Washington right now is trying to move against a Supreme Court ruling, Citizens United, that is a free speech ruling that, if changed, could conceivably prevent you from making this movie.
Yes.
Because it was designed about a documentary, Citizens United, like, well, we can make a documentary about Hillary Clinton, and the left tried to stop that, even though Hollywood, TV, movies, songs bombard our culture with left-wing agenda.
You
couldn't stand that there was one little bit of opposition.
Yeah, the media make a big thing about Citizens United, but the media never tell you that this was an attempt, and a successful one at the time, to stop the distribution of a documentary about Hillary Clinton in the run-up to an election. And the one thing about America is it's always election season. You have a presidential election, and then you have the Georgia special elections. Then you have, the mayor's elections in these cities, and then you have congressional elections in 2022, and you have city elections, and then you have the next presidential election and the Senate elections. And so it's basically, the left can keep putting out the Comey rule and all these ludicrous TV movies and TV series that promote falsehoods about the electoral process. But then they can take you to court and stop us bringing out My Son Hunter. So please, I'm asking people out there to help us, because there's a lot of people, a lot of very powerful interests want to see this movie and this truth not get out.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly hope it gets made, and I can guarantee you, just as I was, at the front of the line to see your last movie, I will be at the front of the line to see this one, because you're right. It's a movie that must be seen. People need to understand how badly the information system in this country is abusing them and being abused by the elite news media, entertainment media, and big tech.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, listen, we're really glad you came to join us today. We have 2 questions we ask all our guests at the end of their interviews. And those questions are, first, during the pandemic, Dan, have you been cooking? And if you've been cooking, what are you famous for cooking?
What's your go-to recipe?
What's your go-to recipe? We'll start with that one.
Well, I will tell you, I made what is called Dutch meatloaf, and I just made it last night. And I've actually cooked a lot. I hurt my shoulder at the beginning of the pandemic, so I've really been working from home a ton. And so I've cooked a lot. Yet, because I walk, I've lost 25 pounds. Oh, and Dutch meatloaf is a spicier tomato-based meatloaf. It's really excellent. I found it in an old recipe book that is recipes that come off a soup can. And it was worth all that I paid for, which I think was 50 cents for the book. But I've made it a bunch. It always turns out top notch. Absolutely love it.
Well, we might get Dan to send us that recipe if he can find it. We'd love a photograph of it. And
I will email it to you when I get home.
We'll put it up on the website. We'll put it in the show notes and all that, with links to that.
And then the second question we ask everyone is if they have a piece of art, a poem, a play, a movie that's important to them, that's inspirational to them.
Well, I mean, because we were just in Rome together. It seems like not too long ago or forever ago. The last place of any significance I went to. I've never been to a place I loved more than Rome. It was so impactful. And so everywhere you go is art. Everywhere you go is sculpture. But then there's a Sistine Chapel. And, no matter how impressed you are with absolutely everything else in Rome, there's a Sistine Chapel. And it just looms over everything. And so I would say, I can't tell you how much I've thought about going back to Rome. Frankly, even in the midst of the pandemic, when they said, the streets of Rome were empty, I was thinking, part of me, I would love to be there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And well, thank you for that. And we've heard that from a lot of friends. A friend of ours was in Venice, Italy recently, and said just it was like really magical, kind of walking around with no one else there, And I know that Italy have actually closed. I think they've closed down again. Imagine a little bit. We've come to the end of the interview. Dan, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
today.
and Dan, maybe we'll try and have you on in My Son Hunter in a cameo role.
Oh yeah, maybe you could come on set.
This is true story. It is genuinely one of my little hidden desires to be in a movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can see Dan as corrupt Ukrainian bureaucrat. Oh, yeah. Number 4.
Number 4. Yeah, that's right. Number 14.
That's right.
Corrupt Ukrainian diplomat. Number 14.
My Ukrainian American family members would truly love that.
Okay.
I love that.
So don't forget, it's mysonhunter.com. If you want to see this movie made, please go there. And thank you, Dan.
And
thank you.
Okay, well that's very good to know, yes. And we'll hope we do see Dan in Rome sometime soon, or even somewhere on this side of the Atlantic.
So it's important what we're doing. So don't forget to go to mysonhunter.com
and give what you can. Thank you so much.
What else? The Oscars.
So talking of movies and talking of Oscars and talking about all this kind of thing. Obviously, we're not making a documentary. We're making a movie with actors. But in the documentary nominations, we're this week announced the Oscar nominations for documentary features. And in among all of those documentary features, the one film that doesn't appear to be even nominated, is the PBS documentary Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in His Own Words. Mm-hmm. Here's, let's have a look at what was included, what they consider important that really needs nomination. Yeah. So here's the 5 nominations. A film called Time, an American documentary, follows Sybil Fox Richardson fighting for the release of her husband Rob, who is serving a 60-year prison sentence. And it won a prize in Sundance and all of that. They also have one called The Mole Agent, which is a 2020 internationally co-produced documentary screened at the 2020 Film Festival. And The Mole Agent is about a spy that goes into a nursing home to expose corruption. There's another one called Crip Camp, and
that's about. I knew that one. That's about a documentary on a summer camp for disabled children, actually. But It's an unusual one to be nominated for an Oscar. Is there anything else, Sam?
That's unusual about Crib Cramp. What do we see? Oh, I know, Phelim. So Higher Ground Productions, the Higher Ground production company of Barack and Michelle Obama, are executive producers. Now because we're all Hollywood types here, we can actually translate what executive.
Let me translate it.
Let it translate what executive producers mean. This case,
I'll translate. Lazy little crappy little people.
Ooh, in this case. Not every executive producer.
So basically, basically, what Higher Ground Productions seems to involve going around, sending people to go around film festivals. And finding the best movie there and saying, would you like Michelle and of course everyone wants Michelle and Barack Obama's name on their movie because that ensures they get an Oscar nomination and a Golden Globe nomination because all these organizations think, oh, the Obamas are going to turn up and add a bit of glamour to us. So my point is the Obamas have not created anything under their banner.
Well, no, they have. No, they have. They made a documentary about Michelle.
Michelle Obama.
They made a documentary about Michelle Obama.
That's the only thing they've actually created. All the rest is they've
bought stuff that was already
taken their
made.
Netflix advance and just given the filmmakers a little crumb of it. Who knows how little, because they don't release those details. And so,
but basically, they've bought things that already exist, right? So in terms of their production company has made a documentary of Michelle. Tell me about this one film.
Collective is a Romanian documentary, actually, about journalists going on.
Can I just say, Romanian documentary, because there aren't enough documentaries available here to be nominated, so they had to go to Romania.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas is. So it's funny. They nominated a documentary. It's journalists, and Hollywood loves journalist stories that they approve of. Journalists going undercover into the Romanian health service to expose the corruption. Now we lived in Romania and we can vouch that it is a very, very corrupt system.
Yes.
But the reason it's corrupt, of course, is because it is a state-controlled system. So here we have Hollywood saying, look at these journalists investigating the corruption in a state-run health system, but you should have that state-run health system here.
And just to do this very quickly, and the last film that's nominated this year, and of course you can really see how significant, important that this film was nominated, is My Octopus Teacher. And My Octopus Teacher it documents a year spent by filmmaker Craig Foster forging a relationship with a wild common octopus in the South African kelp forest.
That's not very nice. Now call it a common octopus. Maybe it's
it's a common octopus.
No,
but
maybe it's a.
Let me just say this. I'm sure it's great, by the way. I'm not joking, actually. I bet My Octopus Teacher is great. Mm-hmm. But it does seem extraordinary to me that the PBS documentary, Created Equal, about the life of Clarence Thomas, the most senior justice on the Supreme Court, the second black justice on the Supreme Court, whose documentary disappeared during Black History Month, that they didn't find room to even nominate it, by the way. Even to give a little nod to the fact that this man's life is extraordinary in every possible way. That this man was born in Pinpoint, Georgia, to an extremely poor situation, and overcame basically all of the odds. Literally, genuinely, that thing of overcoming the odds. This man really overcame all the odds. And his story is deeply inspirational. Yeah. And powerful, and the kind of thing that could just melt your heart and give you hope, so much hope for justice, his story, and yet it doesn't get a nod. And I think we know why, Phelim. Do we know why, Phelim?
This is Hollywood.
Because this is Hollywood, and unfortunately this black man has all the wrong ideas.
Yes.
He's not allowed to have those ideas that black men are allowed to have, right? Yes. So black people all have to have the same idea, because if they don't, they certainly won't get celebrated in Hollywood.
They have to have the same ideas as upper-class white liberals.
Yep, there
Talk
you
about
go.
racism.
Talk about racism.
So this is a little story. I just wanted, there was you remember back in the 80s when we all fought for the coal miners against Maggie Thatcher? Now the elites in Britain are trying to close coal mines and stop coal mines from opening. So a new coal mine was proposed to open, which would normally be a cause for celebration in deprived parts of the UK, and the people are celebrating it. But as the government says, it generated huge controversy because of all these climate activists. So they've now put it on hold and announced, a Conservative government have announced a public inquiry into the opening of a coal mine in Cumbria. And this is another example of Boris Johnson's government just caving to popular, not populist, not even popular, craving to elite hang-ups and elite obsessions that destroy the lives of the rest of us.
And as we said earlier, this is, really this is actually a grim milestone. I mean, the New York Times have been killed saying we've had all these grim milestones with every new death, basically, of somebody from the coronavirus or allegedly from the coronavirus. But I have to say, for us, I think this is actually the grim milestone. This is a year of lockdown. 1 year has passed and we're still in lockdown. And the question is, what have people learned? And I've learned nothing. Almost nothing good. Almost everything I've learned is really bad. So the first thing that I've learned, and I want to hear what you've learned, Phelim, I think we've learned a lot of the same things, but we are not all in this together. That's the most important thing to know. We are not all in this together. Parts of the United States are having a horrible time. Horrible. Places like New Mexico, which we talked about last week and that our friend Kathy Claus wrote to us about. And she had such a bad time, the Clauses, out of New Mexico. After 30 years, I think, living in the home that they lived in, have upped sticks and are moving to Texas because they just don't want to live like that anymore. But also we have friends, dear friends and family in Ireland who are imprisoned, cannot go further than 3 miles, are being questioned by the police every time they leave their home, are just having an awful time. The airport in Ireland surrounded. You're being questioned if you go there. They fined 10,000 people.
And you can't protest in the UK. You can't protest unless your protest is a state-approved topic. Because there was this violence against women protest at the weekend, and the police went in and tried to shut it down like they're supposed to do. And this is outrage. They've called for the resignation of the Metropolitan Police Commissioner because they tried to shut it down. Look, it's your laws. The police were going in to enact your laws about shutting down protest. When they do it against people you don't like, you're happy with it, but that's not the way this should work.
It's a bit like free speech. The other thing I think I've learned is to be very, very afraid of people who call themselves experts. And I think we'd all talked about that a little bit before because we'd learned a little bit about that, a lot about that during Brexit, where the experts said that the whole world was going to come to an end if Brexit happened. The same with Trump. When Trump would be elected, the whole world was going to come to an end. Nothing happened. In fact, the very, very opposite actually happened.
Yes.
So, but during this virus, the Wuhan flu, we have realized that experts are really, really, really terrible people who will kill you for your own good.
Yeah.
You have these experts, and I mean, the really obvious, this is such an obvious point, and it's really irritating to me, how medical experts, God forgive them, like these are really, really awful people who suddenly have forgotten that there is any other disease that can kill you. Yeah. Suddenly, there is only one thing on the planet Earth. I mean, these are despicable. They're diabolical and despicable people. How dare they take to the airwaves, and how dare every government that allows these people to speak and say only about one disease. There's loads of things that kill people, tons and tons of things that kill people. And the idea that only one thing kills you now.
And that the whole world must be, and your whole society must be set up to counter that one disease. And destroying the lives of millions of people in that process, and causing. And you know how they've got away with it, Phelim? Do you know how they've got away with it?
Yeah. They've got away with it because, however despicable and diabolical they are, they have been supported by a despicable and diabolical news media. And I'll show you there's loads of examples of this, and we've got a few stories here. Yeah. But one story we want to show you now, and I'm going to start rolling some tape here. This is a story from the weekend, and this is the New York Times. The headline, and Phelim is a veteran journalist. He's worked for the Financial Times, for the Sunday Times in the UK, and many of those really larger news organisations, including The Economist. I want Phelim to walk us through this. So here's a headline. So you look at that headline, and the headline is, and it's from Miami Journal. It's actually written.
It's a quotation mark.
And it's a quotation mark. I'd much rather be in Florida, right? You get that, right? And obviously everyone knows that, whatever, things are open in Florida. Underneath that headline, it says.
The subheading,
Floridians are out and about, and pandemic restrictions have been lifted. There's just one problem. The virus never went away.
Right, so...
Simple question here. Simple question for a simple person. That'd be me. You ask me the simple question, Phelim.
What is that story then?
So that story tells me immediately that obviously all over Florida, people are dying at frightening levels. That's what I read.
Because the restrictions have been lifted.
Yes, because the restrictions have been lifted.
Yeah. So,
I mean, is there any other? What else?
Let's
could
just
you
read
understand?
it again. I'd much rather be in Florida, as the quotation marks, and then the sober subheading is Floridians are out and about, and pandemic restrictions have been lifted. There's just one problem: the virus never went away, which means the virus is there and it's now killing people who are out and about enjoying life.
So what we're going to do now, if you watch this video, is we're going to scroll to find the actual story in this awful story. We're just going to flick, watch us go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are paragraphs, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think it's 15, Phelim.
Yes.
Do you see how we're going down, down, down? And look at the number of pictures as well. So a lot of people in a situation like this, Phelim, you know this better than me, right? A lot of people don't read the whole story,
yes.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
So now we come to the paragraph. Now we've got to the paragraph that matters. And this paragraph basically says,
Florida, people are not dying.
People are not dying in huge numbers in Florida.
In fact, they're dying in slightly lesser numbers.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Phelim, this is a very simple mind exercise that Phelim can do very, very easily. Can you just tell us how that story should have been written and what the headline should have said? What should this virus, what should this...
Yes.
And by the way, just remember again, the person who wrote this story is the Miami Journal editor. She's a chief. She's the Miami Journal chief.
It's Miami bureau chief.
She's living in Florida. She's on the beach. She's going out. She's whatever she's doing. Maybe she's not, by the way.
The headline should be, I'd much rather be in Florida. Floridians are out and about and pandemic restrictions have been lifted. And the next part of it should be, this is interesting, because it has not led to an increase in virus deaths. Have we made a mistake in other places where there are restrictions? That's what the story should be, but it's not.
So this is the New York Times. This is why these people are diabolical and despicable and dangerous and need to be exposed, and that's why our work is so important at the unreportedstorysociety.com, because people are, if you're just a regular person and you're maybe not even that political, and you just pick up news from CNN or from the NBC, you listen to the news at night on the networks, you really genuinely think, because these headlines are running everywhere, you think, oh my God, Florida must be a mess. Florida's not a mess. Florida is actually a beacon of hope for the whole world. The whole world should be focused on Florida.
And they also the doctors should be researching there, going, why?
Maybe it's sunshine, by the way. Maybe it's the sunshine.
But maybe there's something else. Maybe, who knows? But let's find out why people are not dying in Florida, even though the state is open.
And by the way, this is really important. And why this is important, and there's another story here from ProPublica. I think this is extremely sad. A year later. So ProPublica, a year later. Phelim, who are ProPublica?
Big lefty organisation, 501c3 that runs this so-called news site, and this is a deeply. This shows how despicable they are. This story was out a year ago. This story has been out all year.
Has been known,
and now they're covering it now, right? To say so they can say in a year's time when people criticise them for their coverage.
We did it.
We covered the story. We covered the story. So the
story they have, and you can look it up, people. And I actually sent it to the clauses because it's about New Mexico, and the headline caught my eyes. The lost year, what the pandemic cost teenagers. You have to read this, Phil.
Yeah. In Hobbs, New Mexico, the high school closed and football was cancelled, while just across the state line in Texas, students seem to be living nearly normal lives. How the pandemic school closures exact their emotional toll on young people.
It's a terrible story. It's really long. You should look it up. It's really terrible. And there's photographs of this beautiful young boy and other boys and other girls. It's just terrible, who have killed themselves. And the important part of the story, I mean, it's really long and it's just heartbreaking. But what's really despicable is that ProPublica don't do, again, in the same way with what we just looked at with the New York Times, the headline here should have been, it should be at the very least a mea culpa.
Yeah.
It should at least be that. It should be a mea culpa saying, you know what, more things kill you than just this virus. And by the way, from the very beginning of this virus, we know that children are safe. The children actually are very lucky. And it wasn't the case, by the way, with the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
It wasn't true with the Spanish flu, but it's true with this flu. And I'll just give you the line. Again, a bit like the New York Times, you have to go on and on and on and on into the story to find the important piece. And here's the important line. So the story is about, they send their intrepid reporter to a county on the border between New Mexico and Texas. And the point, of course, that she eventually notices is that across the border in Texas, the schools are open and the children are playing their games. The boys are playing basketball and the girls are playing, and the supporters are in the stands. And by the way, in Texas, where the schools are open across the border, they're wearing masks, they're doing the social distancing, they're doing stuff, right? But the kids are all still involved. All their sports, all the field sports are still operational. Across the border, they literally can see it. And these boys, one of these boys who died, who killed himself, saw what was going on and he actually spoke at the memorial of another child who had killed himself, and two weeks later he's dead himself. Here's the statistic that is buried in the story. New Mexico as a whole had lost 3,145 people, 0.02 of a percentage point higher than Texas in per capita terms. That's that's the top line of this story. So the top line of this story is New Mexico have killed their young.
In suicide.
In suicide, from pure despair. They have killed their young. The New Mexico, as our friend the Clauses said, they talked about the governor of New Mexico. They said that she is the Wicked Witch of the West.
No, the Wicked Witch.
The Wicked Witch.
No, the White Witch.
The White Witch.
Because it's
always winter and never Christmas. That's it.
Yeah.
Where it's always winter but never Christmas. So they've had this horrible situation in New Mexico. Across the border in Texas has been going great, and children have not died. And there's the statistic, but it's buried. It's totally buried in the story, you know. And she gives away the last line, you know. Other tolls, you know. Here's the last paragraph. This is how dishonest and despicable these people are. And this is a very, very, very long piece, by the way. She spent weeks there. But here's her last paragraph. Other tolls, as in, you know, death tolls. Other tolls will be harder to assess. In a year or so, in a year of so much damage done, and in so many ways, there's too much hurt, Espinosa said, this is a mother, said as I headed out of her house after our conversation.
There always seems like there's something new to cry about.
It's very, very sad. It's just terrible what has happened here. Lessons from the COVID year. The Wall Street Journal, a lot of newspapers are you know, doing this year-on thing, and the Wall Street Journal did a very good piece called, you know, Lessons from the Long COVID Year, and they just taught, one of the parts of it that I particularly struck me was, you know, they said, well, here's one of the paragraphs they said, in the anniversary is a moment to consider what the pandemic has wrought and how well the US has responded. Healthcare workers have been courageous, drug companies ingenious, and the average American resilient. I like that. The political class and health experts, not so much. And then they go on to talk about China and the World Health Organization. And I just said it to Phelim yesterday. Yeah. One of the things that should come out of this is that totalitarian regimes like China should not be part of any kind of international organization, because you can't, the idea that you would treat China the same as you would treat Belgium
or Finland
in an organization called the World Health Organization is
or the
just
World
nonsense.
Trade Organization. So basically, China should not be part of this. You know, Afghanistan should not be part of it, or other countries. You know, Burma should not be part of this. Basically, and if they are, then countries like America should not be part of it. They should not give credit and give credence to these countries' regimes by treating them as equals.
And to dig into that just slightly, the WHO have only very, very, very recently, basically a year later, got access to Wuhan to do an investigation of the origins of the virus.
Can you imagine if the World Health Organization said that we need to go to Finland to investigate
to work out a flu
that's killing people, or Wisconsin? They'd be in tomorrow, and the American government would pay them to come in
and they'd hand them the keys of everything.
Yeah, and they would give them
everyone's laptop.
It takes them a year to get to China, and they don't get any laptops.
Yeah, they didn't get any.
So,
and then a headline, just a few headlines here. You know, you probably saw Joe Biden, the president's, speech. I know he doesn't make too many of them, but basically, you know, his goal is that you could have a gathering with your close family on July the 4th. And I have two words for him, which are not, we can't use in this program.
I think Rick has learned how to, our editor has learned.
I'm not going to say them.
How to.
Everybody knows the two words.
How to bleep things.
People who know me.
Well, the second one is off.
Yeah, the second one is off. There you go. Okay, exactly. And then I just trawling through, the panic and the awfulness of Twitter, but so a very nice guy reporting from Detroit telling us that 20,000 kids are back in class in Detroit, but 1,000 of those children have a full-time teacher. Only 20 to 30% of teachers agreed to come back, even with $750 extra of hazard pay. Yeah. You know, the law, and basically we saw another piece, another great piece, by the way, you can look it up, Lionel Shriver writing in The Spectator. And again, we're not all in this together, and just imagine this. So this is the UK gone mad. And one of the things for us also to learn out of this awful pandemic is that conservatives in a crisis will let you down.
Yeah.
Will let you down. Trump, I think, did not. But I think other Conservatives did, and Boris Johnson is a very good example. So here's what's happening in the UK with Boris Johnson, who has a super majority, right?
Yes.
Like, he has a marvellous majority, and everything going his way, and this is how he's operating, how the UK is being organised. International travellers running, this is from Lionel Shriver, international travellers running the gauntlet of English airports must already test negative for COVID before the flight, and on return to the UK get tested again before boarding. Fill out a locator form, quarantine for 10 days, and then test negative twice more. But that's not enough oppression for Boris Johnson's government.
No.
As of this week, outbound intrepids have also to fill out a declaration form explaining why their trip is essential. Not doing so is a criminal offence.
Oh, Boris Johnson's United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
And, you know, and then just a piece from the Mail. I just wanted to quickly go through some of these statistics of things that have happened in America. The COVID-19 is real. More than 40% of Americans say they've gained 30 pounds during the pandemic, and half of parents of elementary age kids admit they've been drinking more than usual. And we know the statistics, and there's terrible statistics about, you know, people's sleep patterns. People are sleeping really badly. 31% of people are reported that they're getting more sleep than desired. 35% of respondents getting less sleep than they wanted to. Yeah. Just basically one awful thing after another. So this is a dreadful, grim milestone, and I think I've certainly learned an awful lot about totalitarianism. And it certainly, you know, and I don't want to be overly dramatic, but it does prove to you how the Nazis were successful. It does, actually. It does. Because we've all just sat there and let it happen. Yeah. We've all just let it happen. We've been so compliant. We've been so polite.
Even worse, some people have been complicit and been informing on their neighbours for having guests around. And, I mean, people have not come out of this well. I think, I mean, one thing I would like to see is in states here in the United States, you know, the governor should not be allowed to declare a state of emergency. People like Gavin Newsom should not be allowed to declare a state of emergency. People like that guy Cuomo in New York shouldn't be allowed to declare an envelope open, never mind that, you know, restrict close businesses all over the United States, all over New York, and schools. They should be only allowed to do it if 3/4 of the state legislature approve it, and it should have to be renewed every month.
And by the way, now
or every 2 weeks.
Now that you mentioned Cuomo, I just think it's worth mentioning again that that's another lesson of the pandemic, another awful lesson of the pandemic, that people like Governor Cuomo was much, much more interested in political point scoring than in saving lives. There was a ship sent by the Trump administration that sat in the bay, the Mercy ship that could have taken all of the elderly who came out of hospitals still with the infection on them, but were recovered, as it were, but were still walking vectors, could have very easily homed them, housed them.
Or the Javits Centre.
Or the Javits Centre, which also remained empty. And he chose not to. And it's very hard to see why, except for the fact that he wanted to do an anti-Trump thing, that anything that Trump did couldn't be good and couldn't be seen to be successful. It's really terrible. So it's really important at this point of our show that we do something cheerful. And the first cheerful thing that happened, I'm going to say the first cheerful, before we get on to St. Patrick's Day, because we're going to get on to St. Patrick's Day in a moment, but the very first cheerful thing, look at this photograph that I just was skipping through on Twitter and saw that Shay, I hope I'm saying his name. Shay, love you, in Israel. Shay made the chicken with 40 cloves of garlic. And by the way, we've got a lot of mail about the chicken with 40 cloves of garlic. And Shay, yes. Can I just say, Shay, your pot looks gorgeous, by the way. And I like your accompaniments. And please keep in touch. And I love if other people, when they do the recipes, would send in a photograph. But look at how lovely Shay's food looks there. And I love the fact that Shay was listening to us in Israel. So big hello and shalom. Shalom to you over there. And now we are going to get ready for St. Patrick's Day.
And the recipe. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. We happen to be taping. Yeah, this is St. Patrick's Day. So yes.
Wednesday.
So we go to Wednesday. Yes, always.
March 17th.
Always March 17th.
St. Patrick's birthday.
St. Patrick's birthday. Well, not probably, is it? You know, it's just a random day that they chose in Ireland.
So what's the story of St. Patrick, huh?
Well, one thing that I want to say is that this is the second year in a row that St. Patrick's Day will not be celebrated by the Irish in Ireland.
Because
and by the way, it won't be celebrated pretty much anywhere else either.
Because we've become all scared of all woke. It's actually so the story of St. Patrick. He was a young man. Wales or France, we're not sure. He was abducted by a band of marauding Irish people, brought to County Down, which is the ultimate insult, actually. And
marauding, what now did you call them? Marauding Irish?
Yes.
Who were in Wales or France?
Yeah, invading.
Would they be illegal immigrants then?
No, they would be invaders, actually.
Oh, invaders, even worse.
All this thing, Irish people say, we never invaded, we weren't imperialists, we never... Well, St. Patrick didn't bring himself across the Irish Sea. Anyway, he was abducted and put into slavery as a shepherd.
Oh, you look at reparations.
Yes.
I see them in my future.
Yes,
go on.
And he escaped. I think an angel came to him and he told him, you have to go back.
Wasn't he eating the food? Didn't he end up eating the food that the pigs were eating?
No, you are. That's the parable of the prodigal son.
Oh, that's true. But by the way, sorry now, just a moment.
St. Patrick's looking after sheep. Prodigal son was looking after pigs.
But I do think that St. Patrick was having a hard time now.
He was having a very hard time. But
yes, he wasn't being taken very good care of.
I think an angel came to him and said, you have to go back to your home place, and then you have to come back and convert these people to
pagans,
to Christianity.
These terrible pagans.
And he did that, and he brought Christianity to Ireland. Famously.
And he got rid of the snakes.
Yes.
Apparently, we had snakes then.
That's
but I think the snakes are back now.
Yes, they are. They're called politicians.
Yeah.
The establishment.
And by the way, you know, a lot of things have changed since then in Ireland. Anyway, we're going to try really hard.
That's who's
we decided to decorate a little bit for St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
We also decided to cook. So here we are back out on the patio. And while Phelim was, I was preparing to prepare for this meal, and I had an accident with a cutting device. Can I just say that the guillotine, if you have one, what are they called? There's another name, hydroplane. No, they're called something else. Whatever, the thing like that. But anyway, really dangerous.
Guillotine. They're
very dangerous, and I have, I'm the victim. But anyway, so Phelim had to take over. So here we have Phelim. First of all, so this is a Guinness stew, an Irish Guinness stew, but it's kind of a made-up recipe, and you'll see why. But actually, it did turn out very, very extremely yummy. But here's Phelim starting out with the beef, and of course, as always, it needed to be dry, as always, and then salt and pepper, and then brown it in batches, and don't overcrowd the pan. You can see Phelim doing a beautiful job here.
I did 3 different batches.
He did. Then we scraped that away off, and we're going to put all of that into the Dutch oven. And again, I keep mentioning Dutch ovens, but if you have any kind of casserole that's worthy. The next thing that you're going to do is 3 red onions and garlic into the same pan. A few more knobs of butter in there. You're going to use a lot of butter in this. And not fry that down about 10 to 15 minutes. Take that off and put that into the Dutch oven. Then you're going to throw in your carrots, leeks and celery. Throw them in, all nice and chopped, nice and finely, and try not to chop your finger off at the same time.
You reduce them down too, don't you? First?
And you reduce them down as well, a bit more butter, and again put them back into the pot. Then you are going to fill that pot with 2 cans of Guinness, and you're going to create a bouquet garni. Now look at Phelim making the bouquet garni here.
One thing you haven't mentioned there, which is very important, is mushrooms.
The rashers, by the way.
And the mushrooms.
Oh, and the mushrooms. We also used mushrooms.
A lot of mushrooms.
A lot of mushrooms, which were cut down in butter, by the way. And what did you put in the bouquet garni, Phelim?
A sprig of thyme, 4 sprigs of parsley and 4 sprigs of rosemary. It's a lot actually, and then 2 bay leaves stuck in together as well later on.
Tucked in the side.
So 4 sprigs of thyme, 4 sprigs of parsley in 4 speak. If you smell it.
And then he tucked that in wherever you can find room, but get it submerged in the Guinness. Put your lid on your Dutch oven and put that in the oven for 90 minutes at 350. Then take it out and then add a little bit of cheese. Oh. Now, there was something else I could have added. I could have done a thing called Pig's Trotters Gear, which I'm going to do another day. But in the absence that I couldn't find Pig's Trotters, which I couldn't find, and I went to 3 different places.
Well, they were available, but it was a butcher who was in the farmer's market in Santa Monica.
And there was a mile-long queue.
Well, there's a very interesting... so if you've got a really woke shop or a really woke establishment, the customers actually want to line up outside it. It's a marketing
Makes them feel worthy.
Makes them feel good that, oh, I queued for
so
half an hour to get in.
So hard to get into Trader Joe's.
And they spend more money, I think.
So we turned around and came home and said, you know what, we're going to make it without the pig's trotters. So instead of the pig trotters, what I did was just to make more richness into the sauce was I added cheese. You can see me adding some cheese. What most recipes would call for at this point would be cheddar. I didn't have cheddar and I didn't want to go out shopping again because I'd already spent a lot of time shopping. So what I used was actually I had some manchego in the back of the fridge that was, you know, in need of moving on. So chop that up, you know, not much.
Talking of moving on.
2 or 3 ounces of that, chop that in. And then also I put in, which is a little interesting, rather odd ingredient that some of you might think, I put in 2 or 3 tablespoons of what you Americans call jelly and what Irish people call jam. Blackcurrant jam, I use blackcurrant and blackberry, but you could use raspberry or strawberry. And it's just to bring out the sweetness of everything. And you throw that in.
And our thank you, John Waters, for the jam.
And thank you, John Waters, our friend in Ireland, for the jam. That went back in the oven then with the top off now. Take the top off the Dutch oven. Don't be taking your own top off. Just threw that in, it'd be a bit naughty there. Don't be doing that. Just put it back in the oven with its top off to let that reduce down. And, you know, obviously pepper and salt. I didn't mention pepper and salt, but you're obviously going to savor, you're going to be
seasoning
as you go along. And then when you take it out of the oven, just taste the liquid and see if you think it needs a bit more of anything. It won't. It's magnificent. We served it with really fabulous mashed potatoes, which we put some Parmesan cheese into and butter, a lot of butter and a lot of cream. And we also served it with Brussels sprouts. And we served it with our friends who can't cook, and that we are so kind to, that we do Meals on Wheels to their house.
On a regular basis.
So now we're going over to their house for the aperitif we had to go with this meal. And this is called Black Velvet. Phelim, how do we make it?
Well, you need alcohol, you need champagne and Guinness.
And you need the draft Guinness.
Yes, out of the can.
You can,
So you half fill a champagne flute with Guinness. And then you use a spoon, and you see how we're doing it there, a spoon to top up each glass with champagne. I don't drink alcohol, but I'm assured by people that it was actually, I have never had it before. Ali, who is Jewish and who has not had much Guinness in her life. As you can, probably, I don't really see a picture of her.
No, we're not showing her.
She doesn't look like she ever has had much Guinness in her life.
No, not much nutrition of any kind. Yes. But anyway, so she and her husband, boyfriend, thought, 5 stars. They were very delighted with it. So very, very yummy. I would highly recommend it. And it's very simple, actually. And, you can use champagne. I happened to have a bottle of champagne in the house that somebody had very kindly left. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Leslie. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Hail Glorious St. Patrick's.
Hail Glorious St. Patrick's. So and we're coming to the very end of the show. I just wanted the last couple of shout outs. Shout out to Christy Beber and her husband. They're the lovely, gorgeous people who picked up our friends in Austin who were in a drama, and who picked them up and brought them to our gorgeous friend Stephanie, who was the saviour of the day in her. I
think the Bebers, and Christy Beber was the saviour. You'll remember there was no cars left. They were there. This young family were there in Austin in the terrible conditions. The only thing they were looking at was sleeping in the lobby of a hotel. And these people saw them and said, "We'll take you wherever you want to go."
Because Christy had made a deal with God and said, "If we get a car, please God, give us a car. And if we get a car, we're going to pick up this family with the little 3-year-old." And so they did, and they took them up the road to my friend Stephanie's house. And again, Stephanie, big shout out to you, my dear friend in Austin. And anyway, it was a lovely story. And Christy has written and said, "We are the couple who picked up your friends in Austin. We have kept in touch and we'll be visiting them soon. We love your show." Well, we love you, Christy. Thank you for that. The other person who got in touch with us, a lot of people responded very positively to the Wesley Smith interview
about assisted
suicide. And he's just gorgeous.
Or as I call it, murders.
And we're going to have him back, by the way, for sure. And Betty, our very dear friend Betty in New York, wrote with a couple of things that I think some people might like to look at. Because obviously terrible things happen to people in this world. Awful things happen to the people in this world, and they make different choices. Mm-hmm. So she sent the story, many of you know it, of Jodi Erickson Tada. We'll put it in the show notes. A devout Christian speaker who, as a young person growing up, she enjoyed riding horses, hiking, tennis, swimming. On the 30th of July, 1967, she dove into the Chesapeake Bay after misjudging the shallowness of the water. She suffered a fracture between her 4th and 5th cervical levels and became a quadriplegic or tetraplegic.
So then how did she react to that?
And she spent 2 years in rehabilitation, and she suffered all kinds of things: anger, depression, suicidal thoughts, and religious doubts. But in the end, she she started to learn how to paint with putting the paintbrush in her mouth and all of that. She has, fast forward, she I think has written 40 books at this point. A movie was made about her life called Joni, the unforgettable story of a young woman's struggle against quadriplegia and depression, and it's been distributed in many languages.
That's the book.
And she's spoken all over the world, and this is kind of, this is what people can do. Terrible things happen to people.
And unlike that terrible movie, Me Before You, and that terrible book where the plot doesn't even make sense.
The plot didn't mean he had found love in the arms of a woman he had never met. He would have never met otherwise. And the other thing that Betty sent us, which again I think you should look up, is there's a YouTube channel called Roll with Cole and Charisma, and they have 500,000 subscribers, by the way. And they are, as you can see, we are an interracial and interabled relationship. Our goal is to spread positivity and bring awareness to all around.
Yeah, and the basic story is quadriplegic boy meets girl who is working at rehab, and they have it's a joyful, wonderful, but honest YouTube channel.
As our friend Betty says, to life, Lahaim. And that's a great way to end.
Yes.
To life, Lahaim. Don't forget to support us, please, with the movie.
MySonHunter.com. Please, Hollywood wants us to be covered up. Big media wants us to be covered up.
And we can do this.
Yes.
We've done it before, and we're going to do it again.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.